What if a single conflict lasted for over a century, outliving 5 generations of kings? From 1337 to 1453, the map of Europe was written in blood. It was a struggle for the very soul of the French crown. 2 dynasties, the Plantagenets and the Valois, fought for ultimate supremacy. Today, we reveal how the borders moved and nations were born.
Welcome to our deep dive into the 100 Years' War. We are going to track every major campaign and territorial shift on this map. You will see how England almost conquered France before a sudden reversal. Get ready for a masterclass in medieval strategy and geopolitical shifts. Let's look at the map that defined the Middle Ages. The war began because of a complex web of feudal obligations and royal bloodlines. King Edward III of England held lands in France but refused to pay homage to the French king. He went a step further, claiming he was the true heir to the French throne. This claim turned a legal dispute into a total war for the crown. The map of France was about to be torn apart.
Initial tensions focused on the Duchy of Guyenne, an English stronghold in southwestern France. The French king Philip VI attempted to seize this land, prompting Edward's retaliation. England wasn't just a small island, it was a continental power with deep roots. The struggle for these coastal lands would fuel decades of raiding. Both sides began mobilizing their knights and peasants for the first great clashes. By 1340, the war moved to the sea at the Battle of Sluys. The English fleet achieved a massive victory, gaining control of the Channel. This naval dominance allowed Edward III to land troops at will on French soil. The map now shows English influence creeping into the northern ports. France was now vulnerable to the devastating English chevauchés, or scorched earth raids. The tide was beginning to favor the invaders.
In 1346, the world witnessed the power of the English longbow at the Battle of Crécy. Edward III's smaller army decimated the French cavalry in a stunning upset. This victory gave England control of the strategic port of Calais. Calais would remain an English outpost for the next 2 centuries. Look at how the red territory expands around this vital northern gateway. The French nobility was in a state of absolute shock.
However, the map was frozen by an even deadlier enemy, the Black Death. In 1348, the plague swept through Europe, killing 1/3 of the population. War was impossible when there were no men left to fight or farm. The borders remained stagnant for several years as both kingdoms suffered. It was a dark pause in a century of violence. Even the kings had to wait for the pestilence to pass.
When fighting resumed, the English Black Prince led a brilliant campaign in the south. In 1356, he captured the French king John II at the Battle of Poitiers. This was a catastrophic blow to the French state and its morale. With their king in a cage in London, France spiraled into chaos. The map shows English control expanding significantly during this period of French weakness. The English had never been closer to total victory.
The Treaty of Brittany in 1360 marked the end of the first phase. England gained nearly 1/3 of France's territory in full sovereignty. Edward III renounced his claim to the throne in exchange for these vast lands. It was a high watermark for the English presence on the continent. On our map, the red sections now dwarf the blue royal domains. But this peace was only a temporary breathing space.
The French recovery began under the wise leadership of King Charles V. He avoided large battles, instead using a strategy of attrition and slow sieges. Bit by bit, the French reclaimed their lost territories from the weary English. By 1380, the English were pushed back to a few coastal strongholds. The map shows the blue territory surging forward, washing away the red. The tide had turned once again in this long struggle. Internal strife then plagued both nations, leading to a long period of stalemate. England dealt with peasant revolts and the deposition of Richard II. France suffered under the madness of King Charles VI and a bloody civil war. The Burgundians and Armagnacs fought each other while the English watched. The map shows a fragmented France, divided between rival factions. This internal weakness invited a new English invasion. In 1415, King Henry V of England launched a legendary invasion. At the Battle of Agincourt, his outnumbered force destroyed the flower of French chivalry. The victory was so decisive that it changed the course of the war. Henry V moved to conquer Normandy and eventually reached the gates of Paris. The map turns red at an alarming rate as northern France falls. Henry was now the master of the north.
The Treaty of Troyes in 1420 was a diplomatic earthquake for France. It disinherited the French Dauphin and recognized Henry V as the heir to the French throne. Henry even married the French king's daughter to solidify his claim. For a brief moment, a dual monarchy of England and France seemed inevitable. On the map, the northern half of France is now officially under English control. The French crown was slipping away forever.
The turning point came at the Siege of Orleans in 1429. The city was the last major obstacle preventing an English advance into the south. If Orleans fell, the cause of the French Dauphin would be lost. The English had the city surrounded, and victory seemed within their grasp. The map shows the English pincers closing in on the strategic city. Then, an unlikely figure appeared from the countryside. Enter Joan of Arc, a peasant girl who claimed divine inspiration to save France. She inspired the French army to break the siege of Orleans in just days. Her presence shifted the morale of the entire nation from despair to religious fervor. The map shows the English retreating from the Loire for the first time in years. This was the spark that would burn down the English continental empire. The momentum had shifted for the final time. Joan of Arc then led the Dauphin to Reims for his official coronation as Charles VII. This gave him the legitimacy he needed to unite the fractured French people. Even after Joan was captured and executed, her impact remained on the map. The Burgundians eventually switched sides, joining the French king against England. The English were now isolated and facing a revitalized French state. The endgame of the century-long war had begun. The French army was modernized with the first professional artillery in Europe. In 1450, they crushed the English at the Battle of Formigny, reclaiming Normandy. 3 years later, the Battle of Castillon saw the final defeat of English forces in the south. The legendary English longbowmen were no match for the new French cannons. On our map, the red territories are being wiped out entirely. Only one small enclave would remain. By 1453, the war was effectively over, though no formal peace treaty was signed. The English were expelled from all of France except for the port of Calais. The map of Europe was forever changed, with two distinct national identities forged in fire. England turned its focus inward, eventually leading to the Wars of the Roses. France emerged as a powerful, centralized monarchy. The medieval world was giving way to the early modern era. The 100 Years' War was more than just a series of battles. It was the birth of nations. It transformed the way wars were fought and how people saw themselves. No longer were they just feudal subjects. They were English or French. This century of conflict shaped the map of Europe we recognize today. Thank you for traveling through this epic history with us. The echoes of these 116 years still ring through the halls of history. If you enjoyed this journey through the maps of history, there is much more to explore. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more updates and deep dives into the past. Let us know in the comments which historical conflict you want to see mapped next. Your support helps us keep the history alive for everyone. Until next time, keep exploring the world through the lens of history.